Well, actually, the technology I developed applied to the whole industry. So it's not only to the Exxon, but for Exxon, for example, we have the Diana project
Right.
that have to design the mooring systems. And actually for the Diana project, there's a very special issue that happened. And Diana is a spa.
Yeah.
So the spa, when it's under loop current, they can develop what they call vortex-induced motions. I don't know whether you're familiar with it. It means that with the current hitting the spa is moving back and forth perpendicular to the current direction. So I think Exxon was, have the spa, and also Chevron has a spa called Genesis Spa. Exxon has the Diana Spa. So those two spas were put into place, and it's operating. In the year 2000, both spas were hit by the loop current, and then they experienced some very large vortex-induced motions, and that's way beyond the design criteria. And actually, I think the Chevron Genesis Spa is close to breaking, because the people can see the movement, and they can hear the cracking sounds of the chain. And when they did the mooring analysis, they find out the mooring should have failed.
Wow.
So that was a very difficult issue, and then it shocked the whole industry. So I was the API chair at the time. I led the industry to work on this problem. I organized workshops and API meetings. And then I spent 9 months on that. And finally, we got into some consensus, because it's a very controversial issue. Some people, Exxon, would use one method in the model testing. Another company, like a Technip, they use a different method. So they all will have different opinion on that. And I worked for 9 months and finally get the consensus, and then put in the API, RP2SK, and then the industry is, have something to use from then on. So that's somewhat a very exciting moment I have in my career.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, did the Exxon Dianas have the same kind of problems with chains cracking as a result of this vortex movements?
It had the same problem with a very large movement, but Diana's in deeper water. The large movement affected less, so the problem is less, but it's still there. They design the spa with a criteria AOD. AOD is amplitude over the diameter ratio. It's 0.2, but what they have seen is 0.5, so you have double the movement.
So how many individual mooring lines and chains, I'm assuming they're chains, or whatever kind of hardware you use to put into the ground, the ocean floor surface, how many individual systems are attached to a spar facility like Genesis?
How many lines, you mean? How many mooring lines?
Yes, sir.
I think they have between 12 to 16 mooring lines at that time, but now some of the platform may have 24.
Right.
So this keep increasing.
So conventional understanding at the time in the 90s and the early 2000s was 12 to 15 individual mooring lines were sufficient.
Yeah.
But as those facilities, as the fatigue factor began to set in with kind of the new, a new understanding of how these facilities operate in extreme deep water and even ultra deep water, and given enough time, people began understanding that there were additional problems ongoing. So talk about how that work has now influenced the modern standard for mooring in spars and other facilities. Is it just bigger and more? or is there? It sounds like there's a lot more to it.
I think that it depends on from project to project. Some projects, they might need more mooring lines or larger mooring lines, but some projects, they would be less affected. But the main thing is you need to have a design guideline to guide them through so they can follow step by step. At the end, they will say, I need 12 lines, it will be enough. In one project, in another project, say, hey, I need 16 mooring lines.
Right.
So my job is develop the procedure.
The tool. Right.
And the tool. So it's whatever they walk through it, they would know whether they have enough or not.
Because if you, let's say you add one or two, that could be a cost of a few $1 million, right?
Yeah, well, that's not even big money compared because the project cost
$2 billion.
$2 billion.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's
right.
not big money. But if, for example, for the Janus Spy, if they fail a mooring, now that you talk about the big bucks. How are they going to fix it? How are they going to replace it? You know, the thing is in there already. At that time, they get a big headache.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with it. Yeah, you know, there's not enough. But in the design stage, you can improve it, increase. But now they're in place. And replacing those mooring systems on the top of huge bucks. And then also you lost production. So that's how important these things is.
Now, what about the effects of the 4 or 5 hurricanes in the last 10 years, and particularly in the Gulf of Mexico? How has your research and your work and your tool been able to respond to the increased risks and the changes, not only regulatory, but physical changes, with some of these mooring lines failing or some of these facilities requiring additional mooring lines? Talk a little bit about the challenges of dealing with the big storms here in the last 10 years in the Gulf of Mexico with respect to the work that you do.
You hit in a very good topic because the industry is getting so much trouble in dealing with that issue. Now, in 2000, starting 2005, 2006, I think around that time, we got hit by 3 hurricanes, Ivan, Katrina, and Rita. And we have more than 20 total mooring failures for the drilling rigs. It means the rig actually floating around, and there's a lot of lawsuits because some people claim, your rig hit my stuff.
Pulled up a pipeline.
Yeah, right, jacked on the pipelines. Now that was a very, very exciting moment for the industry. Now that's about drilling. I need to give you some background about drilling. The drilling vessel has to be mobile. You have to move from one location to another location. You cannot put a very heavy mooring system on it. Otherwise, you cannot move around. Right. The issue is very simple. So the drilling vessel is designed for a much lower environment. And I think that in the old API, we required the drilling vessel to meet the 5-year to 10-year return period. And that's a pretty low environment. But compared with the floating production system, you need to design for the 100-year environment. So most of the rigs meet the 5-year, 10-year environment. And then when those big hurricane hits, you talk about Ivan, I think that has a return period of 400 years.